So, and this is something my producer, Ron Bergman, who you mentioned, so this is a way that we've always worked together is I've always written on spec with the exception of the Star Wars film. I never pitch, I never set something up somewhere. And that's served us very, very well because that means we've never been in a development process with any of our movies.
Welcome to Third and Fairfax, the official podcast of the Writers Guild of America West. I'm your host, Brian Gary. In our latest episode, Josephine Green Zhang speaks with screenwriter-director Rian Johnson about crafting his latest film, Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. They talk about his own origin story, the art of the twist, and much, much more. Listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, or Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. And now, here's Josephine in conversation with Ryan.
Hello, and welcome to WJ Third and Fairfax podcast. This is Josephine Green Zhang. Today we have as our guest Rian Johnson. Now, Rian Johnson is a two-time Academy Award and Golden Globe nominated filmmaker known for crafting original stories across a wide range of genres. He earned critical acclaim with Knives Out, and his sequel, Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery, premiered on Netflix in 2022 after a record-breaking theatrical run. And his third film in the series, Wake Up Dead Man, which is what we're going to focus on today, premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, and it opened in theaters November 26th with a drop date on Netflix on December 12th coming up. Beyond Knives Out, Johnson's credits include Star Wars, The Last Jedi, Looper, The Brothers Bloom, and his debut film, Brick. All three of his films, Knives Out films, were produced through his company T Street alongside longtime producing partner Ron Bergman. And your wife, Karina Longworth, is the creator and host of the podcast You Must Remember This, which explores the secret and forgotten histories of Hollywood's first century. I have to mention that, so just always a nod to that. Welcome, Ryan, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, Jessica, thanks for having me.
So, where are you from? What's your origin? What was your upbringing like? And what made you want to become a writer, then director, and writer-director?
Well, I was a kid in Colorado, near Denver, but then my family, who was not in the film business at all, my dad was in the home building business, and he kind of switched jobs and moved us to Southern California, to Orange County, down in San Clemente. So that's where I was a teenager, and that's kind of where I first started just making movies with friends. That was kind of how it all started. Is just that's how my friends and I would hang out. Is over the weekend we would just get together and make a movie with our video camera. Not not to submit to festivals or even show to anybody or anything. It was literally just the way that we goofed around. So and that it kind of is what started me into just loving doing that and telling stories. And I'd always been a writer, always written stuff. So I just kind of yeah, I kind of just kept doing it. And even today, I'm still working with my cousin Nathan Johnson is my composer, and we've been making movies together since we were 10 years old. And Steve Yedlin, my cinematographer, we met when we were 17. So that vibe of trying to just make movies with friends for fun, that's kind of tried to keep that going.
Did you act in some of them, or did all of your friends kind of act in them?
No, yeah, we acted. Yeah, I acted. Sometimes we didn't have anyone else to act in them. But it wasn't even, I don't know. It was, again, it was just it wasn't like writing a script and getting together to shoot it and putting together a cast. It was literally just who's around and wants to hang out, and then we would just pass the time by making a little movie. So yeah, we all acted in everything.
Were they mysteries back then, or were they like a war sci-fi things, or
I'm
interesting?
sure we I'm sure we did mysteries. We would do a different thing every time we got to. It would be just like, oh, let's do a James Bond parody. They're mostly parodies. They were mostly mostly kind of taking a movie that we love and then kind of goofing on it or riffing on it or something. So yeah, we were the Mel Brooks of the San Clemente San Clemente Junior High scene.
Shifting, like skipping way ahead to past your other movies, like let's, like with Knives Out, the first Knives Out, what, like what was the origin story of making that? Like you had come off of, like what did you come off of right after, and like what was your aha moment, and like that really started the ball rolling with this franchise?
Well, I was coming off of Star Wars, so I had just spent 4 years of my life having that incredible experience, and I had been kind of thinking of Knives Out and sort of planning it for way before Star Wars. I'd say for about a decade, I had been kind of chewing on the idea, and not just generally the idea of doing an Agatha Christie style murder mystery, although that was the starting point. But I had been chewing on structurally how I would attack it, and the idea of sort of doing the specific thing I do in that movie of starting it as a very traditional whodunit and then kind of turning it into a Hitchcock like thriller, kind of feigning that we tip the hat to the audience and turn it into almost like a how catch 'em. How she, okay, she did it. How is she going to get away with this? Because we really like her. And then turning it back into a whodunit at the end. That basic structural gambit I had been kind of chewing on for about a decade. Um, yeah, and after Star Wars, it felt like, well, I can probably, this weird little thing that's kind of a genre that no one really cares about right now. I can maybe have the juice to get one of these made, and we'll see if we can get away with it.
Can you talk a little bit about, did you have to pitch it? Was there a pitching process, or with any and all of the Knives Out series?
So, and this is something my producer Ron Bergman, who you mentioned, this is a way that we've always worked together. Is I've always written on spec, with the exception of the Star Wars film. I never pitch. I never set something up somewhere, and that's served us very very well, because that means we've never been in a development process with any of our movies, and it means I sit down. It's I'm it's very much betting on yourself, but you just sit down, you write exactly what you want to write, and then at that point we even start soft prep, financing it ourselves. We'll start the casting process. We'll start hiring HODs. We'll start even scouting. And at some point, when we have the budget and we have the cast and we have the whole package put together, that's when we'll take it out and start pitching it around town, looking for a distributor, basically a studio to put the movie out. So that's what we did with Knives Out, and so we did pitch it. But what we were pitching is the finished screenplay with Daniel Craig attached, and a number in terms of how we would make this movie. And we got a lot. We got a lot of no's. We actually pitched it all around town, and because the murder mystery genre was kind of considered a little dusty, I think, and because people thought the movie on the page seemed small, it all takes place in one house, and aren't there any big set pieces or something? But Lionsgate, and we had a partner, MRC, and Lionsgate really saw the potential of it and really got it, and so we made the first movie with them.
Well, that's so inspiring. Can you talk a little bit about when you were starting Knives Out, and for each of the films, like your planning process, your outlining process? Like, do you even start with yourself making a log line and a story area, just to like, what keeps you motivated, what keeps the fire burning, for however many months like you're going with this?
Well, I mean, first of all, in terms of the approach, I'm a big outliner, so I will, and I work very structurally, at least at first. So I spend the first 80% of the process working in little notebooks, just kind of figuring out the shape of the movie, and figuring out the structure of it, figuring out. But that includes also all the character work, all the themes, the emotional arcs, everything. But I work in notebooks this size. I've worked in these pocket-sized moleskin notebooks forever, and some of it is doing dialogue, some of it is doing just random thoughts, and then some of it is literally drawing like a little arc on the page, and doing little crosshatches and figuring out, okay, this is what this act and this act and this act. And especially with these movies, it really, really helps me, literally, to be working this size, just to be able to have the whole thing mapped out on a piece of paper that size and be able to take it all in one visual gulp helps me see the forest for the trees. It helps me see what's actually important, which is the main dramatic arc of the protagonist, and kind of make sure that that doesn't get lost in the inevitable complexity of a murder mystery. And then in terms of keeping the fire lit, oh man, I don't know, man. And we're talking to writers right now. You guys know it's you just try your best to stoke it every day. You just at a certain point at the beginning the fire is roaring, and then at a certain point you're just cupping your hands around some cold embers, hoping for some heat, and uh, and it's your deadline that's pushing you forward, and just the idea of getting to the end of this thing. So that's just yeah, that's just writing.
I love that. I recently finished a draft of something, and I was just
Congratulations.
thank you. I finished it on Thanksgiving morning, and then I hosted
Um,
Thanksgiving. Oh my god! But I had been
wow.
listening to William Goldman, like the
Yeah,
audio, and I'm like, this sounds so lonely, but I'm like, this makes this less lonely.
yeah, absolutely. I think anything that you can do to sort of, I mean, I have an album that I've listened to on repeat when I've just written the last couple scripts. I listened to Sound of Silver, the LCD Sound System album, and I just put it on repeat. And both Star Wars and Knives Out and also Glass Onion, for some reason, it just triggers a thing in my brain of type, 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 type. So, yeah, I think whatever works, you just got to do it.
Let's move on to like how onto this on Wake Up Dead Man. And oh wait, one question is like for each of them, do you sort of have a theme that you keep coming back to, and what would you say each of the themes for the Knives Out are so far?
Yeah, it has to start with theme, and I think theme can be kind of a tricky word with writers because it sometimes implies a moral or a lesson or something kind of pat. And I know some writers kind of that I know, some very good writers I know, kind of recoil at the idea of writing to theme. For me, I have to start with theme. For me, theme is not the thing I'm trying to say with the script. To me, theme is kind of the question that I'm chewing on, the thing the script is kind of about, which is much more a multifaceted thing that I'm kind of getting at from all these different angles over the course of the whole thing. But I need that central principle to keep coming back to for everything to be connected to. And and that whatever that central theme is, I also the first step is I have to know how the genre that I'm doing it in, not just covers it like a candy coating or something, but how the genre actually interacts with the theme, and how the way the genre works or what the genre is essentially about informs that theme and vice versa. So, so with the first Knives Out movie, it's the genre is kind of like a family based cozy mansion mystery, and so for me, the thing that movie is kind of attacking from different angles is uh, family and politics, but really family and money. It's really about, for me, my experience in terms of what how money poisons the well of family, and that goes very well hand in hand with a murder mystery set in a mansion based around a family that all has to do with an inheritance. So those things click together. And then Glass Onion, it's kind of also about money. It's about money and friendship. I think it's kind of merrily we roll along a little bit. The Sondheim show. It's kind of about the incompatibility of those things, um, and so then with this one, it's very much about faith, and I hope it's kind of a big multifaceted examination of faith in many forms, and personal faith, but also faith in the culture, faith in politics,
Mhm.
um, kind of just Christianity in America in 2025, and it's that which is something I it's very personal to me. I grew up very, very Christian up through when I was in my early 20s. I was deeply personally Christian. And I fell away from it in my 20s, and I'm not a believer anymore. So it's something that I have deep roots in and a lot of thoughts about. And it's something that the idea of using specifically the impossible crime murder mystery genre to talk about faith, using something where the mystery itself almost seems supernatural and seems miraculous, to talk about the church and faith felt like those two things could really click together.
In this film, can you talk a little bit about what inspired the different characters and character archetypes you created, and like how each of them you feel explores this theme of faith?
Yeah, I mean, the tricky thing with writing one of these is always creating the suspects, because you just have to do it. You got to create like 6 to 8 suspects, and they all have to be distinct, and they can't just be distinct in terms of physical type or their occupation or something. You have to really figure out what's different about each of their voices. One of the ways I do that, that's related to the idea of theme, is I always think about what the central hub of the movie's topic is, and then I make each one of the suspects reflect a different fragment of my experience with that topic. So with faith, each one of the suspects is something that's very, it's kind of like a shard of an experience that I personally had over the years with faith, whether it reflects part of me or something I've observed. And so that means that each character is genuinely going to have their own perspective. It means they're all, though, going to be connected to the central hub. And it means I'm starting each of them from a place of empathy, from a place of what I connect with in them, which I think is really important, especially if some of them are despicable.
I noticed that in this, it's starting with, there's two different types of priests. Would you say priests or ministers?
Yeah,
Priests.
priest in this one, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Although I didn't grow up Catholic. Actually, I grew up Protestant evangelical, so it was ministers when I was growing up. But yeah, in the movie, it's priests.
Mm-mm. And did it start really with the two different kind of priests that are really two different kinds of exploring how faith really can go into the how these priests like preach faith into the two, and sort of starting from the different kinds of ways that the way that they're preaching faith and they're leading a flock.
Yeah, and it started even more fundamental with that, with kind of what is at the heart of these two priests, with Judd, genuine in a flawed human way. So he's not perfect, obviously, but genuinely trying to be giving, and with his arms out, and sort of actually Christ-like in terms of embracing the need of the world around him and the people around him, and being a servant, having a servant's heart. And then Wix, beyond just the idea that he's bellicose or fire and brimstone or something, the essence of Wix is really that he stokes a us against them mentality, and phrases everything in the terminology of warfare, and talks about building his walls, and the idea that we're under siege and they're out to get us against them. uh, and so those are kind of like the two real camps that are set against each other at the beginning of the movie, and are two things that very much, when I was a Christian, I experienced in the church. Both the great stuff that Judd has, and the not so great stuff, in my opinion, that Wix has, and everything in between. And so it was kind of embodying those into characters. But then once Wix exits the story at the end of the first act, that conflict of us against them versus actual Christ-like selflessness carries through the rest of the thing. It gets transferred, though, and I think this is the more interesting phase of it. It gets transferred to Blanc, and it gets transferred from Wicks not just to Blanc, but to the mechanics of a murder mystery. Suddenly, Judd, like us, is swept into being in a murder mystery movie where it's all us against them. It's all this wicked, these suspects, and one of them is guilty, and we're going to find them and punish them so that we'll get you off the hook. And he gets pulled into that, whereas he knew pretty obviously to come up against Wicks and that's wrong. Suddenly, when it benefits him and he's pulled into the gamified version of it, it becomes a little more seductive, and he finds himself swept along with it until he kind of catches himself.
Yeah, because Blanc also represents not having faith, but then in a way having faith in himself as in his logic and his own powers to deduce as a detective. You'd say
Yeah.
is that thing, yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's another example of how I just, the theme and the genre kind of going like this is just that when I started thinking about the similarities of you know, whodunit style detective fiction and and you know the story, the kind of global story in the Bible of the church, the notion of there's an original sin where a murder gets committed and the universe is thrown into moral chaos, and then the detective kind of comes down from on high and sorts the guilty from the innocent, takes everyone's confession in questioning all the suspects, or figures out who's guilty, who's innocent, and sets the moral universe back to right at the end of it. So that overlap seemed very interesting to me, and I definitely play with that in terms of Blanc's relation to the story.
Oh man, yeah, I grew up Christian too, but had I stopped when I was around a child. So it like kind of left, and so it's very interesting to like have that imagery and then all that
Yeah,
stuff come up to you, how you become the Blanc too, and then you can kind of
yeah,
navigating it in this day and it's very, I don't know, it there's a lot to it. So
there
um
indeed. Yeah.
I I wanted to ask, like, so in terms of like, you decided to use voiceover narration with this one, and with some of your other films, you hadn't, like the first Knives Out. And I'm curious, like, at what point in your drafts do you put in the narration, and then what, and why, and yeah, and you do, yeah, just would love to hear your process on that.
Well, yeah, it was from the beginning. I kind of had the idea of having the first act be narration driven with Judd, and there were a few reasons that made a lot of sense to me. I had never done that before, and that's something that very often murder mystery books are written in a first person style from not the detective generally, but generally like Hastings or like one of they're the main protagonist in it. So it seemed like a tool I hadn't used yet. It also, for the same reason that Blanc doesn't enter until the end of the first act in this movie, the reason being that I felt it was important, especially with the complexity of what this movie is about, and for a lot of reasons, to kind of give Judd that stage for the first act to really have the audience understand his viewpoint and understand what he's up against, and have them get fully on board with him. That means that first act is through his viewpoint, and there's no clearer way of making getting that across than literally the thing is kind of him telling this story. I also I wanted to play, and this is slightly kind of a murder mystery game thing. I wanted to. It's a little nod to one of my favorite Christie books, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. The idea that we're in a subjective point of view, in that we see this is Judd writing this story that Blanc is reading at the beginning of it. So that, in my mind, also gives the audience a little bit of a promise of, okay, this is taking its time, but this whole thing is a narrative, and what the narrative is the narrative of the Good Friday murders. So there's a murder coming, and Blanc will enter it and solve it. That kind of gives a little bit of that promise at the beginning.
And not to give a spoiler, but I feel it does a great job of setting up his motivation of like, he committed a sin, and
Right.
he
Yeah.
he's making
Yeah.
penance for the rest of the
Yeah.
film through that. So did you start? So you started with this in mind and had the voiceover the whole time. That's
I
um,
did. It took a lot of rewriting to get the voiceover right, though, because the problem with voiceover is things can become dramatically inert if you're not careful. And so
mm,
having voiceover, I thought was going to be a way of kind of, I thought it was going to make the first act a little easier to write because it would give me a tool to get a lot of exposition out really quickly. The reality is, I think it actually made it harder to write because you still have to figure out how to keep the pace up and keep dramatically driving the story forward. And voiceover can seduce you into feeling like it's easy, things becoming kind of an info dump.
mm. It seems like it can even be. It's like its own character that you have to juggle with the rest of,
Yeah.
that knows things or not, but it just seems like this other thing you have to juggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. We recently at the WG had a really cool panel about the twist, and there was a lot of guests who came on and were talking about about how they approach coming up with a twist ending, and some of them wrote on like Battle Paradise or and Battlestar Galactica, just like all these really cool shows.
It's a great
And
show.
they so I'm just curious about your approach with the mystery. Like, do you have the twist figured out? Oh yeah, also the writer of the game. Sorry, I'm blanking on names, but they were all too awesome. But
Yeah.
um just like coming up with the twist first, or having the twist be something that you develop through the characters as you're writing in the middle of it. And I know you do a lot of outlining, but so that process might be figured out as you're outlining too. So
Yeah.
just curious.
Well, I want to listen to that panel. I want to hear how everyone else does it. I mean, for me, a twist is only, I don't know. A twist is I never even really think of them as twists. To me, they're dramatic turns, and a dramatic turn, as opposed to, for me, that even the word twist, it just sounds like it's kind of like, it sounds like you're just kind of saying you thought it was this, now it's this. And I think the best twists, though, as we define them, are ones that are rooted deeply, that the story could not exist without, and that are inevitable when you go back and watch the movie a second time. And I think that's the key to a good one, is if it feels like the writer was just getting bored and so just had something crazy happen, then that kind of feels disconnected from what came before. I think what you're really aiming for every time is to have built a foundation where, when that turn happens, it is surprising, and then it feels absolutely like, oh, that's right, of course that's what happened here. That's nothing else could have happened at that point, in retrospect or on the second viewing. So I mean, it's hard. It's not, it doesn't tell you how to do it. It's just, it's tough, but that's I think if you're going to have a, a big dramatic turn in the movie, earning it in that way is pretty essential.
Mm. Are there any turns or twists that you admire, not necessarily in your own film, but just some that have been your favorites?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want to spoil them, but there's, I mean, I just rewatched one of my favorite movies, Sleuth, which is written by Anthony Shaffer, adapted from his play, and it's Michael Caine and Laurence Olivier, and it's basically has a two-act structure, and the twist at the end of the first act is absolutely fantastic, and also is exactly what we described, is the sum of its part. It's not a veering off left turn. It's the complete, you realize when it happens, it's the completion of what you've been watching the entire first act. And it's absolutely great. And it's kind of, yeah, I'd put it in there with the golden standard of twists.
I love that. No, it's cool because on this panel they also talked about um how so how like so much of mystery writing, they a lot of them loved magic and like
Mm,
magicians and had practiced that
yeah.
when they were younger, and how a lot of it is the misdirect, and how
Yeah.
the misdirect is something really, especially early on in the story, like setting that up, and sometimes even burying who the murderer is in a whodunit, um,
Yeah.
by dismissing the person, the suspect early on. Not to give away too many secrets, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious your thoughts on the misdirect and magic in the mystery genre or thriller or suspense.
Yeah, there's a lot of connections, and I am also a big Magic fan. I was good buddies with Ricky Jay, who was one of the best who ever did it, and was also kind of a scholar of magic. And one of the things I think, I mean, and you can talk about on lots of different levels in terms of, in terms of misdirection, in terms of making it look easy so that they don't notice the hard thing that you're doing. All of that, to me, the maybe the most applicable thing is something that I kind of learned from watching Ricky do what he does, which is it's not so much about the misdirection of the sleight or what you're doing with your hand or making some kind of I mean, it's for Ricky, it was much more about the storytelling of both the patter that he's giving while he's doing the trick, but also the storytelling of the narrative of the trick that you're following. And the reality is that's the strongest kind of misdirection is when is not look over here and you're doing this, but is let me tell you a story, and then the audience gets involved in the natural path of that story, and suddenly they're on this wavelength and they're on this train moving forward, and their eyes go in a certain direction, their attention is focused where he wants it to be focused because of the storytelling and because of the dramatic arc of the storytelling. And to me, that's the only kind of misdirection that actually works is involving the audience emotionally and having them lean forward because a character that they care about is in peril, and how are they going to get out of it and what's going to happen next. The same stuff that involves an audience in any other genre, if you can engage them on that level and they're moving forward on that level, then you can plant clues in plain sight. Then you can drop stuff that's incredibly obvious that but they'll be moving ahead on this thing. So I to me, I don't know, that's I always start from a place of the audience is smarter than me. I can never outsmart the audience, but I can entertain them, and I can make them lean forward in their chair and wonder what's happening next, and that will keep them looking this way while the stuff in the peripheral vision is being kind of planted for what comes down the line.
That's very astute because it feels like it's like connecting emotionally. So the twists or the turns come from an emotional place.
Yeah.
It's funny because it was mentioned, and I agree that like that's why Kaiser Sose works, in the usual suspects,
Yeah.
or just so many things that it's the storytelling as opposed to the misdirect. So that's really
Yeah,
cool.
I think so. Yeah.
Um, okay, I want to touch base a little bit on just like you know Poker Face because I'm a huge fan of Poker Face. I love it, and just curious about how does your creative process differ from television when you're in television versus the feature film,
Mm.
and what are the upsides of each medium and downsides?
Well, I mean, my for in terms of my experience, the big difference is just writing alone versus writing in a room full of people. And the upsides of writing in a room full of people are you're not alone, which is really, really nice. It's nice to have other people there and not feel so alone. Um, and it's fun. It's bouncing ideas off of each other are fun, and that process I really really enjoyed. The In terms of actually Poker Face versus like the Benoit Blanc mysteries, I think of them, even though they're both mysteries, for me they're completely different genres because the mechanics you're dealing with a whodunit, which is the Blanc mystery, which is the typical Christie style mystery, versus a How Ketchum, which is what Poker Face is, which is drawn from Columbo and from Levinson and Link, who really ran the first season of Columbo and kind of polished up this method of storytelling, the How Ketchum, where you see the murder done in the first act, you see who did it and how they did it. There's no mystery in that regard. And then the whole thing is a cat and mouse game between the killer and the detective of how are they going to get caught. Um, and I love that genre because it, on paper, it seems like it shouldn't work. You describe it, and if you just pitch that and had never seen an episode of it, you would think, okay, what? Why are we still watching if we know who did it? We know how they did it. We know the detective's going to catch them. The name of the show is Columbo. Columbo's going to catch them. Why are we interested? And yet, it's like it's a little bit like physics saying the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly, but it can. It works, and not only does it work, it works. I think it's a stronger narrative engine the than the who done it style, where it's a mystery, a group of suspects, and we find out at the end which one did it. I think the How Ketchum is actually stronger, because I think it's the Hitchcock thing. It's suspense as opposed to surprise. It's oh my god, how is the I want Columbo to catch this bastard, or I want Charlie Cale to catch this son of a bitch, and seeing the back and forth between them, and then the satisfying feeling of the detective catching them in a way you didn't see coming.
Mhm. And for both, like, what's your rewrite process like? Because you may maybe in your first draft you don't quite have the everything laid out with the surprise quite right. Like, what's how do you
Yeah,
tackle your rewrites?
in the first draft, nothing is right. You don't have anything right. I hate to, as someone who just finished a first draft, I hate to say those words, but we both know it's true. It's writing is rewriting. It's just always the case, and and I don't know. It's rewriting is much harder for me just when I'm alone writing a feature, and it's just a miserable part of the process. I think it's why I put off writing the first typing the first draft for so long. It's why I like staying in these for as long as I can, and hopefully working out kinks as much as I can in this form, because once it's down there, on paper, it's much harder for me to go in and kind of see the big picture. But you have to, and you have to just rewrite. On on Poker Face, it's different because typically one of the writers in the room will be assigned the script, and we'll break it together in the room. We'll figure the whole thing out, and then we'll send the writer off, and they'll come back with a draft a few days later and give notes, and they'll come back and have done those notes, and then typically I'll sit down and do a pass on it, basically. So for me, that's something very different, is rewriting somebody else's script. For some reason, though, I think because I'm always in the room breaking it with everybody, that is infinitely easier than rewriting my own stuff, because I think I can see what's on the page and what works, and I have a very clear instant thing of, okay, no, the scene, the point of the scene is this, so that means if we take away this, it'll get to it quicker. So I don't know why rewriting is much easier when you're rewriting somebody else, I think.
Yeah, when I've been in the room, I feel sometimes it yeah, getting that first draft is so painful, so then it can feel like you can see the just you can see it's like rearranging furniture. You see somebody else's, like, you're like, okay, I can
Yeah,
do I can-
sure.
um that's interesting. So what how do you deal with perfectionism? I feel like as writers, like, I'm redoing The Artist Way right now, so I'm like kind of in the middle of like my Julia Cameron phase, and I'm on that chapter about perfectionism and how it's the devil.
Mhm.
And just curious how you like you know when do you know when something's done? And
I mean, yeah, I wish I had an answer. I don't think you do. I think at some point you kind of, because the reality is every time you finish typing, I don't know. I feel like at each phase of it, you kind of, you hope it's, you hope it's done, and then you realize it's not. And I think I don't know. For me, for me at least, and it's less an enlightened process of coming to terms with the lack of perfection and that being the work or blah blah blah. For me, it's much more trying to get it right. Oh, it isn't quite right. Trying to get it right. It isn't quite right. And that just happens until until it's right enough that you can start going on to the next step with it, I think.
Mm. Okay, for a quick change of pace, and I'm changing it up a little bit, but some are going to be the same. I like to end with the popcorn pop quiz. All right. Oh wait, I did have one question before that. I wanted to ask you, um, what movies would you recommend or books would you recommend if you were teaching a mystery class on mystery writing? What movies and books would you recommend? Like top three that like would be on what would be on our syllabus?
Movie wise, I would recommend the 1978 Death on the Nile with Peter Ustinov as Poirot. I think it is a great. It's for me. It's my favorite. It's my favorite whodunit movie, and uh, it works on so many levels. It's funny, it's big, it's fun, it's glamorous. It's also a really good mystery, really well told. It uses cinematic language to its advantage in ways that a book couldn't to make the mystery work. And it's rooted in a great, just like meaty love triangle kind of story with Mia Farrow giving a fantastic performance at the heart of it. So I would say do that one. And then you got to have an Agatha Christie in there. I would actually, I would probably put The Murder of Roger Ackroyd on the syllabus because I talked about Death on the Nile using cinematic language. Ackroyd, first of all, does this outlandish, crazy twist, like we were talking about, but this also feels inevitable, and does it in a way that only it can only function as a book. That book is unadaptable in terms of the twist that it pulls off, which is really interesting. And it's also just a delight. And then I do one more Christie. I would do, and then there were none, just to show the breadth of what which I think it's her best book, but also to show kind of the breadth of what a murder mystery can be, and how Christie was endlessly inventive. And then the last one I would throw in the author that was the biggest influence on this movie, John Dixon Carr, who's someone I've come to relatively recently. We referenced The Hollow Man in this movie. It's actually not my favorite book of his. I would say maybe start with Hagg's Nook, and check that out, and you'll see he has a beautiful kind of gothic, juicy way of writing, and his impossible crimes are always delightful.
I love it. A great starter pack. I'm
There
like,
you go.
I've read one, and then there were none.
It's the
Awesome.
best. It's really good.
It was really good. I've read Mousetrap too. That's
Oh,
on
yeah.
me. Yes. Okay. Popcorn pop quiz. All right. Favorite snack in a movie theater?
I will go with a combo bite of Milk Duds and popcorn, or uh, or it's either that or hot tamales and popcorn.
I have never heard of that. But I love it.
Good.
That's I have a friend that does furikake, like the Japanese like snack and like crackers.
Okay.
But that also in the popcorn, which is I do tapatio.
Sounds good.
Um okay, favorite this is different than before. Favorite theater in the world. Movie theater.
Favorite theater in the world. Um, Boy, there are several that I could. There's several that I could say. I think I'm tempted to say the New Beverly in L.A., but I think I might have said that last time we talked. I'll say the Christine Cinema in Paris. I have so many great memories of watching movies in that cinema, and they do great revival programming. And it's the Christine in Paris.
I love that. I have to give a shout out to my friend David Chen, who's a projectionist. Now he's not a projector. He's a projectionist at the New Beverly, because
So
I did that at the Story Craft Cinema.
I
So
love it.
that's awesome. And so your favorite theater in LA is the New Beverly.
I
Um,
think so the New Beverly. I'll call out a few more. The New Beverly. I love the Vista. I miss the ArcLight perpetually. I
mm,
always wish the ArcLight was reopened. And then the Egyptian is fantastic.
I love the Egyptian. Um, yeah. One on my list is Gardena Cinema.
Hmm?
Sean Baker shows a lot of films down there, and it's like a one room cinema, and it's owned by a woman. They every year she shows her mother's favorite film, Face Off.
Ah, that's hilarious. I love that.
Your favorite curse word?
Oh man. Beep. What is my favorite curse word? This is like an inside the actor's studio question.
100%.
I would say, uh, I mean, nothing beats just the solid, definitive fuck. I mean, it's a basic. Come on, that's just it's percussive, gets right to it, and yeah, I'll go with that.
I love it. Mine's motherfucker.
Yeah, but too.
Favorite director?
God, I have too many of them. It depends on what day you ask me. I'll just say in terms of directors who are working today, or who are like current, and let's narrow it down further, current American directors.
Mhm.
Um, I mean PTA, but everyone says PTA. That's boring. Kelly Reichardt actually is one of my favorite directors working today, and I feel like her movie this year, Masterminds, is fantastic. But all of her movies, First Cow is incredible. It's a masterpiece. Showing Up, the last movie she made with Michelle Williams, is hilarious and is just wonderful. So yeah, I'll say Kelly Reichardt.
Love that. And oh, if besides Masterminds and besides your own film, like what film have you seen recently that you'd recommend?
It's been a really good year for movies, I think. Uh, I saw It Was Just an Accident. It was fantastic. It was so good. I loved Sentimental Value. It was great. There's a movie. I don't know if it's coming out until next year properly, but there's a movie called Pillion that is has Alexander Skarsgård in it. That's I saw it at Telluride, and I knew nothing about it. It's a first time director, and I think it's just a beautiful relationship story and funny, and yeah, I think it's pretty great.
Mm. I just saw Left-Handed Girl and I loved it. I just
Yeah,
highly recommend it. Yeah,
I have
yeah,
to look out for it.
yeah. Okay. Well, last question. If you could do one other job in this life or another life, what would it be?
Oh boy, that's a good question. Um, I will say, I think it would be fun to teach. I think it'd be fun to be a professor. Get myself a little tweed coat, just be a professor somewhere. Teach history, perhaps. Yeah, I don't know. I'll get myself a pipe and be a professor.
I could see that. A professor detective.
Yes. Professor by day, crime solver by night.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. It's been a true pleasure. Uh,
Yes, yes.
yeah, Wake Up Dead Man, December 12th. And it's just certified fresh, I've heard. So congratulations. I love the film, and I can't wait for you to keep making them, and your next film, and let's celebrate this. So it's just so hard to make a film, and it's such a bright light in these times to get to see this. So thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Josephine. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Third and Fairfax. You can listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, and Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. Also check out writtenby.com, the Guild's online publication, for more on writer craft, career, and union life. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.